to this community sing. It is so great to welcome you here. Let me just introduce myself formally. My name is Allison Mondel. I'm the director of Eya Medieval Music. I am a medieval music specialist and teaching artist, as well as a transformational voice coach. And I also happen to be a very huge admirer of the great mystic and visionary Hildegard of Bingen, whom we are here to celebrate and glean great wisdom and inspiration from today. And so if you are here, hello in the chats. I am so happy you are here. I have my chat going here. Great. I'm just sort of checking on my tech. If you are here, please say hello. I would love to know who's here. Hi, Monica. Hey. So, my friends, we are here in this final event of this season of this. What year is it? 2022. This 21-22 program season of Eya. But it's really also the start of a new beginning, and more about that soon. But this has been a year, just to recap, of, in terms of programming, was a real step back than the year prior, which was our 10th anniversary and also the first year of the pandemic. So there was so much reinvention, reimagining, reworking that was happening. And it's been a really introspective year in many ways, but also rejuvenating. And I'm very, very happy about that. So what I want to do today is just settle into this piece. This whole point of this community sing is to gather together and to do a deep dive into a piece. In this case, this miracle of a piece by Hildegard, O viridissima virga. That is my favorite piece. There, I am totally biased, but it is one of my favorite pieces of all time, and certainly that of Hildegard. Hi, Carter and Maria and Blake and Sue and Carter. So good to see you all here. I'm so grateful that you are here and that we get to walk this journey together in all the places that we are, which is so cool. So everyone, let me just start by sort of talking about what we're going to do today and the places we'll go, and to also just invite you into a special container that has just bloomed after a seed was planted in ways that which we can connect more regularly, which is so fun. So we have this piece. I'm looking down at this edition. If you have not yet gotten your edition from the Eya website of viridissima virga, I invite you to do that. This is part of, I'm going to put the link in the chat for you. This edition is part of a larger initiative that I launched with my colleague Hugh McElroy called the Symphonia series. And it's our offering to the world to take the songs of Hildegard, 77 songs in total, plus her morality play, the Ordo Virtutum, and to create a new musical edition as well as a new Latin to English translation in a way that is accessible in the highest octave of that word, that brings this music into the 21st century, into a place that is universal, that is both readable for a newcomer or a less advanced musician, but is also accessible in terms of the way in which the Latin is represented. and that the essence of this music, at least through the lens of myself and through Hugh, is going to allow us to have a connection that is really tangible, not just looking backwards in time, but to really touch it in the moment, which is what we're here to do today too. So, without further ado, I want to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of this piece, and then to start to make our way through it musically. So, O viridissima virga is slightly unusual. Now, I should say that anytime we're talking about the music of Hildegard, we already have this caveat. Something about it is already unusual in that it was part of this body of work of this particular woman, this creatrix, who has more chants associated with her by name than any other composer in the medieval era. And this unique way in which she received inspiration, spoke about the visions that she experienced, and the radical way in which it was composed, not to mention the fact that it has been so beautifully preserved for us and that we're talking about it now. So in this piece, what's very interesting, first of all, is that it is written in the one manuscript where it is preserved in the Reason Codex. It is indicated that is simply in the rubric to the Virgin, to Maria, I should say. And we have basically to Mary. We do not have any kind of distinction as to what kind of piece it is, i.e., what form it takes, whether that's an antiphon or a sequence or a hymn or a responsory, which are the four main pieces, main musical forms or musical liturgical forms that we would see identified in her sources. So we have what Barbara Newman calls a song. We have a song to the Virgin. Yes, it could be identified as an antiphon for lack of a better identifier, but let's call it a song. And what is unique about this song, I'm going to hold this up, and I know that it's backwards on my camera, but I just want you to be able to see this sort of, the stanzaic structure is highly irregular. Nothing really to identify it at all. Certainly not in, say, a sequence, which it would have couplet phrases, or even a hymn that would have something of a rhyme scheme or something that draws it together poetically or sort of gives it some structure poetically. But we really don't have any of that. It's through composed, and it has, in some ways, a lot of wildness about it. Although the music, the tune, I would not describe as wild in any way. It's fairly straightforward and it's quite simple. It's in a style that we would define as, I would say, somewhere, again, hard to wrap our sort of neat and tidy descriptions of a compositional style that would be considered either syllabic or pneumatic, i.e., a syllabic style of writing in which every note would be assigned to a syllable, versus pneumatic, which has a few notes per syllable, give or take. It's more loose. And on the other side of that would be melismatic, where you'd have many, many notes that would be assigned to one syllable. And the way chant is, in general, the way chant is a sort of, what's the word I want? Laid down or represented in manuscripts, it was composed in a way that every syllable was represented by the music. So we see it first in, rather than just sort of letters, we see it, or words, we see it in each syllable. So that was an untidy way of saying it's somewhere between syllabic and pneumatic, which makes it, frankly, pretty easy to read. Okay? So what we're going to do is just look at this text for a moment. One thing that we never see in this piece is actually the name Mary. It is most definitely attributed to her, this song, but all we really have are symbols that are alluded to in this song. Not only alluded to sort of textually, but in ways that we are seeing through the imagery of these symbols as well. It's really a song of the senses. And as such, in each of these symbolic treatments of Mary, or the essence of Mary, or a symbol of Mary, an image of her that isn't just something that we know about, say, from the Bible, but it really draws on something, an allegorical reference to the Bible that might, say, be connected to the Song of Songs, in which we remember the spices and, oh, the scents and sights of the Song of Songs. So here, Hildegard is drawing us into a world. It's like a little microcosm of Mary. It's really exciting, and every time I come to the song, I see something new, which is the case for any of Hildegard's songs. But what we are going to do is just dive a little bit deeper under the surface. So here, we also have in this song not only these symbolic images, but we have one sort of aspect of Hildegard's gestalt, her sort of symbolic notion of viriditas that is very, very elegantly presented in this piece. And it's referred to even in the very first line in the word viridissima, or greenest. So on the surface, to be the greenest branch, let's just tease that apart ever so slightly. So it gives us a reference point here. Mary as a branch, or a virga. This is a very common reference made about Mary. Most, I would say, primarily referring to, and this is just a subjective opinion, this is everything you're hearing today, but a reference to the tree of Jesse, this symbolic sort of family tree of Christ. And as we see Jesse at the bottom of this tree, a patriarch of the Bible, and those sort of personages that came before Christ, King David, and then we come all the way to the top of the tree to a branching off where we see Mary, and then the blossom from that branch being Christ. So we really have this ancient lineage, or drawing back into the sort of earthbound origins, if you will, of Christ. And Mary being the willing vessel of that lineage. So here we see this branch. Why is it green, though? This is really kind of the essence of this particular symbol. And seeing the way in which Hildegard speaks, and she speaks about this in the Causa et Cura, the nature of viriditas. And here we see the vitality, or aliveness, of the creative power of humans, that which flows from God into the world, the creative or greening power of humanity. And what is so beautiful about this is, and one of my favorite things to do is to really see how this is represented, obviously in the song, but through us, through this music and the way we sing it, or the space that we hold internally in which this song comes through us. So here's where we really come to step into the role of creator here in the moment. And Hildegard has this, magical vehicle of the song, but it is really through us. And interestingly, she describes this power of viriditas as being rooted. This is amazing. I will look for the quote and I will put it on our Facebook page, where this power of greenest is rooted in the sun. S-U-N, the sun. The symbol of light, the symbol of the creator, of creation, and that we have this creative flowing out from that source. I love that. And it makes a lot of sense. One way in which I see that sun, and this is something that I teach about and invite you to try on today too, is that as we enter into relationship with our body as a vessel of our voice and of the music, the sun, or that source, is through the heart. And through the heart, we are really making that connection with source energy. And what's so beautiful about the heart and the heart space in the chakra system, the color of the heart is green. So there's some other layer of beauty and complexity and mystery in the way in which we are here creating in this moment and inviting the beautiful creation of life into our lives. So what we have here, I have my harp here with us, but I'm going to turn on the piano just to be able to sort of lean into the song a little bit, and we'll sort of work through the text as we go through the notes. There's a lot of notes. There's a lot of words. And I trust that we'll be able to get through it just fine. But let's get started. So here we have O viridissima virga, Ave, hail, welcome, which means come in. In some ways, it also is this sense of praise. Now, I want you to be able to just take a moment to look at this first line as we're going to sing this. Here we are in G mode. One of the few songs that Hildegard does compose in this mode, Mixolydian mode. There are no accidentals in this piece. So we are just sort of purely square in Mixolydian. And what does that mean? It's basically like a G major scale, but we have a lowered seventh instead of a raised seventh coming back to the final, which is G. So that would be G, lowered seventh would give us F, back to G. And that is a very, very, very simple overview of this mode. But it has a brightness to it, which I love too. This is other unique quality of this song. Have a listen, my friends, just to this first line, and join with me with your voices. Have a listen. O viridissima virga, Ave. Let's try that all together. Ready? O viridissima virga, Ave. Beautiful, beautiful. So here we have this classic O opening on the very first note. We don't have a lot of time to spend on that. And in fact, it's almost like we're getting through the first three words to get to Ave. So here I want you to be aware. You'll never forget this when I say this next thing. This Ave. Does it remind you of something? Oh, when the saints, right, go marching in. So here we have 1, 3, 4, 5. And here is a melodic motif that we're going to come back to a lot in this song. And what I love about it is it has this sweet sort of third that leads us into that open fifth. It's really guiding us up. The range in this song is very modest, so we don't really get to see the great heights that Hildegard often leads us to in some of the more sort of dramatic pieces. It's very modest. But there, just keep your eye out, or your ear out really, for that motif. Can we sing that first line one more time and then we'll hop into the next? Ready? O viridissima virga, ave. Beautiful. Now, a simple little tip. When we are ascending into that word, it's very, 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 very easy to think, I'm reaching up. And what I want you to really consider in this moment, as well as the rest of this piece, is when we ground that sort of voice into the heart, we center the voice in the heart. And when we ground ourselves in the body, allow the breath, nothing is reaching up, but in fact, allow that to be opening out. It's a very different energy. It's going to be so much easier to sing, but it's going to really be the sacred invitation to allow this beautiful essence into your sphere. Now we have the next line. Listen. Very syllabic there. Let's try that. I know I'm moving a little bit more quickly if you haven't noticed too. I love that word, citationis. And line 3, listen once. Sanctorum prudisti. Line 3, one more time together. Sanctorum prudisti. Beautiful. And in those first 3 lines, we see this sort of first stanza, the first statement. And then she takes us on a journey through each sort of subsequent stanza. We pick up a new image. We go to a new place. We enter a new world, almost. So here in the first sort of 3 lines, hail, O greenest branch that went forth in the windy gusts of the saints' discernment. Windy gusts. We sort of sense the Holy Spirit. We sense this sort of fresh air that comes through the saints' discernment. The saints, Barbara Newman refers to that Sanctorum prudisti of saints' discernment, or their questioning. I have a lot to say about that, and I don't want to take the next half an hour talking about that, but I want you to consider this sort of idea of enlightenment, or an answer to a prayer or a miracle that comes from a saint's. And I want you to put yourself in the position of saint, that who questions what they are here to do and serve. So here we have Christ consciousness entering in through Mary to enlighten us all. How amazing. Let's sing those first 3 lines together. That might feel a little different. Erica. No, not the most. Sorry, Erica. Hello, Estragon. I love it. So let's try that. O viridissima virga. Ready? O viridissima virga. Ave. sanctorum prudisti. Love that. And here we sort of make our way up and back to the final, which is G, make our way down, and always coming back to this home base of G, this final. My teacher once said to me, and I want to share it with you as if you are a chant singer, that it's so helpful to always know where you are in the mode, to always know where does that sit, how does that feel, so you never ever have to worry about where you are pitch-wise. You can really rely on this deeper intuitive sense of where you are in the music, in the mode. Okay. The next section, cum veni tempus, quo tu floruisti in ramis tuis, ave, fuit tibi, quia calor solis in te, sudavit, sicut odor balsami. When the time came for you to blossom on your branches, hail, hail was said to you, because the heat of the sun produced sweat like the fragrance of balsam on you. Whew, that's so beautiful. There's so many things in there. Let's look at the notes. Let's look at the music. Quick little aside to read this edition. Whenever you see a consonant or vowel, usually a consonant, but not singularly, in parentheses, this is indicating what is called a liquescence in the music. And the way we interpret that musically or rhetorically is that we sort of close onto the consonant on that entire pitch. So ramis. In the case of ventoso, yes. Viridissima, right? So here we have line 4. Cum veni tempus. Why don't we try that? Ready? Cum veni tempus. Here's line 5. Listen once. Quo tu floruisti in ramis tuis. Let's try that all together, line 5. Quo tu floruisti in ramis tuis. And on the word ramis, where you see that line, which in the contemporary convention would be, notational convention, is a tenuto, or holding. Here we see in the notation, it's this num called a pressus, where we add this musical or rhetorical tension or pressure into this pitch. So we add a little bit of that musically and vocally, but never from here. Always from here, always from the in the intention of adding pressure, that we allow the breath to allow that gesture to take place. How gorgeous. Let's try it. Let's try line 5. Ready? Quo tu floruisti in ramis tuis. Beautiful. Here's line 6. Ave, fuit tibi. Oh, don't we want to keep going? Yes, we do. Have a listen to line 7. Quia calor solis in te sudavit. Let's try line 6 and 7 together. We're going to go and connect those together. More about that in a moment. Line 6. Ave, fuit tibi, quia calor solis in te sudavit. Listen to line 8, the last line of this section. Sicut odor balsami. Yes, like the scent of balsam. Here's that beautiful Song of Songs reference. This sort of humid, wet, moist sense. It's sensual. It's so whisks me away out of Silver Spring, Maryland, into a very beautiful place. So here, let's try this whole section, my friends. Let's dive in. Why not? Lines 4 through 8 of this very scented section. When the time came. Ready? Cum fanit hus, isti, in ramis tuis. Ave, ave, sit fuit tibi quia calor solis in te, so David, sicut odor balsami. Yes. One thing that does become apparent as we go on is, again, looking at the convention of the way this edition was made. We have larger note heads and smaller note heads. We have some of those note heads that are elided or slurred and some that aren't. So when we see a larger note head versus a smaller, what I want you to consider is just the relative stress, duration, weight. It is non-rhythmicized music. And what we are doing in general, whenever we're looking at chant-based repertories, is enunciating the text and communicating the meaning of the text. But here, Hildegard gives us very highly specific information via the notational language. And so what I've done here is given you a larger note head for a noon that has some greater or a relatively greater weight or duration or length. And then when we see something that has a smaller note head, like the syllable mi of balsami, we are representing a ligature, which is a number of neumes, or something that is contained in one sort of unit of a very dynamic sort of figure of notes. Dum, 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 dum. And the idea is that we're just moving right through that. We're sending energy through. Oh my goodness, let's keep going. You're doing great. Any questions, you just drop them into the chat. Or if you have some ideas, I would love to hear them. So the next section, nam inte floruit pulcher flos, qui odorem dedit omnibus aromatibus, que arida erant. For in you a beautiful flower bloomed, which gave scent to all the spices which were dry. And we see this beautiful sort of connection with that odoriferous sort of reference that we're seeing in the earlier stanza. So I love this one. I love singing it. It feels good in my voice. Listen once. Here we have line 9. Nam inde floruit pulcher flos. I'm going to keep going. Qui odorem dedit. So what we have are these two lines that are, following the delineation of this poetry from Barbara Newman's definitive edition of the Symphonia. You can tell that musically we're still going on. I made the choice to keep it separated by poetic line, but by all means, let yourself continue to go. This is where I would draw an arrow to sort of keep the musical energy flowing. So let's do lines 9 and 10. Ready? Nam inde floruit pulcher flos, qui odorem dedit. Here's line 11. Omnibus aromatibus. finally brings us up. Bum, 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 bum. And we keep going. Let's try line 11 all together. Ready? Omnibus aromatibus. Line 12, have a listen. Yes, want to try that all together. Line 12. Yes. And then we have a very short little stanza, the next two lines, that we still see is a continuation of the idea going forward. But here we see the highest place in the song. Have a listen, line 13. Et that's so good. And they all appeared, et illa apparuerunt omnia in viriditate plena, in full freshness, verdure, greenness, aliveness, lushness. Pick one that suits you best. And all of these things appeared in their full viriditas, the capacity of viriditas. I love that. Let's try those two lines together, 13 and 14. We didn't sing 14 yet. Let me sing it once, follow along if you feel comfortable, and then we'll do it all together, 13 and 14. Have a listen. Et yes, I love that so much. Let's try that together. Ready? Et illa apparuerunt omnia in viriditate plena. And sometimes, when we see that beautiful cascading, that's really something that has a lot of movement, but is really, you are at liberty to sort of move that forward or slow it down. It happens when we are en masse in a group that things just tend to slow down more. And I want you to be able to feel comfortable with that. But there we have this sort of full splendor of this creative greening power, the viriditate, of the saints, of all of this sort of lush nature, the world around us in full splendor. How amazing. And then we have this next stanza, und that begins, unde celi dererunt rodum super gramen. We have that image of the manna coming down from heaven. The heavens poured dew over the grass, and the whole earth was made happy, since its womb produced grain, and since the birds of the sky had nests on it. So here we have a lot of images. We see this food that allowed, the whole earth was made happy, humanity and nature, and the womb produced grain. That womb is a really interesting way to we see that in so many different lenses. And the birds of the sky had nests in it. And that is a biblical reference that I cannot lay my finger on it, but if someone can, that would be wonderful. However, we have this sort of new section that has this very all syllabic, really. And something in the way that I like to interpret this has a real sort of storytelling quality. Listen, line 15. Und celi dederunt rodum super gramen. Here's line 16. Et omnis terra leda facta est. Could we try that all together? Let's try it. Line 15. Und Lieder und Raren super grande et omnis terra leda facta est. It's as if we're sort of talking to children. A quick note for any manuscript readers, the asterisk that you see above the last note on line 16 is notated as an A in the manuscript, but makes no sense. And just sort of from an editorial point of view, if you are someone that is sort of looking to the original scores, I'm going to sort of just give you a little editorial sidebar here. If we were to sort of hear line 16 as it were written in the manuscript, it would be thus. Yeah? And unfortunately, everything about that seems like an error. Musically, rhetorically, it just doesn't work. We also do not see that sort of melodic motif anywhere else in the piece, but we hear a lot of this. Right? So what I did was made an executive decision to just notate that as a G and to perform it as a G, to come back again to the mode, the final of the mode, right? It's giving us that groundedness, and that happens so often in this piece. We start on a G, we go up, we come back to a G, every line almost. So making good decisions based on instincts and good sense. So here we go. Where were we? Let's go do lines 15 and 16 together one more time, my friends. Ready? Und Lieder und Raren super grande et omnis terra leda facta est. Here's line 17. Quoniam ficera ipsius frumentum protolerunt, just like ave, right? Protolerunt. Here's line 18. Et quoniam progress. Beautiful. Let's do lines 17 and 18 together. Quoniam ficera ipsius frumentum protolerunt et quoniam progress. Now we have the nests being made, the nidos. 19, line 19. Nidos in ipsa habuerunt. One more time, line 19, everybody. Nidos in ipsa habuerunt. So we hear a lot of sort of similar melodic material that came earlier. And we have, that gorgeous, gorgeous music. So then we've come, oh my gosh, to the end of that section. And we have the next section that begins on line 20. Deinde facta est esca hominibus et gaudium magnum epulantium. Onde, o suavis virgo, in te non deficit ullum gaudium. And therefore, food for humans was made, and the great joy of banqueters. So my friends, who are the banqueters? All of those who take of that grain. Here we see this great joy, the grain, we see the Eucharist here that was prepared, the manna and the Eucharist in its later incarnation, and how we have this joy that we are the partakers of that. And then finally she says, but oh, sweet Virgin. We finally hear, this sort of direct word of Virgo. I love that. No joy is lacking in you. Is she comparing her joy to what we haven't known yet? It's a mystery. I love this, love this, love this. And I love the way she sets this, and we'll discover that in a sec. Let's go to line 20, everyone. Have a listen. Tende facta estisca omnibus. Let's try line 20 all together. Tende facta estisca omnibus. Line 21. Et codium maium Love that. Let's try that all together, line 20. 1. Et gaudium maium ebullientium. Let's do lines 20 and 21 together, just to see how they work together as a unit. Tende facta estisca omnibus, et gaudium maium ebullientium. Now here we have a slight moment of pause. Unde? Therefore, or it's this, whence is what Hugh uses, whence, or hence, there. Have a listen. You sweet Virgin. And whenever I hear that, I want to infuse that with sweetness, with something that is more internal, that's something that savors and connects. It's very, very satisfying. Let's try line 22 one more time, all together. Here's line 23. In you, no joy is lacking. Let's try that all together, line 23. Inter non deficit Beautiful. Now, here Hildegard is taking really a departure from the whole piece. And this next line is always something that I wouldn't say been troubled by, but question and sit with. And as I said earlier, is something that every time I come back to, like I see through a new lens. And here she says in one line, all these things Eve scorned. And as we see in almost, 98% of the Marian songs that Hildegard composes, we have a reference to Eve. And specifically, this sort of flip side, or the opposite sense that she sort of saw Eve sort of detracting or pulling out of that joy, and that Mary as the new Eve, the redeemer of womankind, of really humankind. But we see this in this one sentence. Eve scorned all these things. She didn't have to say that, but she did. And we could see that in a contemptuous light or some kind of wisdom or understanding. But here she says, so we hear that motif again, but it's moving very quickly. It's through a quilisma. It's through these very quickly moving notes. Therefore, all these things Eve scorned. Yeah? Try that one more time, my friends, and just see how it feels. I don't even know what my voice wants to do with that today. I want you to try it in a different way. Can we try that in a very sweet way? An introspective, something that is internal, versus something that is allowing a little bit of rumination internally. Here we go. Let's put the period there. And let's keep going. Because then we say now. Now, let there be praise. Let us praise the Most High. The Most High. Now, are we referring to Mary? I don't think so. I think that has to do with the ending of altissimo, where we see that masculine ending. If I have any Latinists here, that would be amazing, but I think we're talking about the great creator. So let's sing that. Listen once. Nunc autem lausit That's how it ends. Let's try that all together. Ready? Nunc autem lausit altissimo. And there it just sort of fades off with no fanfare whatsoever. Not even really a goodbye. But herein we have this curiosity that's embedded into the music and so many images, so many mysteries, so many ways that you can find within yourself to tease that out and become that unique lens through which this song is being made manifest now. And that's something I want to encourage you. The music, as you've seen, is fairly straightforward. There are only 7 notes in the entire thing. We don't even span an octave. We just don't. It's modest in scope. And in some ways, it relays to me this having a greater personal quality. And indeed, in the way that I sing this, and the way that I interpret this, is with a harp and having some very, very, very simple accompaniment and having something that is very introspective and personal and quiet. Something that really brings you in and to allow you to enter into that internal space. And in many ways, it has a folk-like quality to you. And it really is just about telling the story of what is happening according to Hildegard through you. Oh my gosh, my friends. This is a longer piece, and it would have been very ambitious to get all the way through it and then actually run the whole thing too. But, this is at least an introduction and an invitation to go into the images, not through the mind, but through the heart. And it's so exciting. It's such a joy for me to talk about this. And in fact, doing these events has been some of the most joyful work that I've done this season, in being able to explore these songs in great detail. And I have been thinking a long time about, not only what is Eya doing to sort of maintain our community connection in this sort of act, this sacred act of meeting in community, which is something I treasure, but to also keep the conversation going. And so I really wanted to, thank you, Maria, I wanted to keep the conversation going and have, I have so many more things to share with you, not just about Hildegard's songs, but in many, many other ways in which exploring Hildegard's works and conceptual frameworks and visions are going to enrich and inform our own lives and vocation. And I want to invite you into my answer to keep that conversation going, which is a new Facebook group called Encounter Hildegard. And I have this container where we are going to continue to look at these songs and various themes in weekly classes that we'll be able to join together and enter into conversation, and to be able to look both at the music, to explore our voice, our own unique voice, and the way in which our unique voice is rising to meet its calling in the world. And all of that really through this lens of Hildegard and her inspiring example. So I am going to put the link in to invite you, if you haven't already, to come over and join the group and say hello. And I am planning to have a class next week, but we'll have regular interaction there inside the group. And of course, going to see what's coming up around the bend for Eya next season. And there's a lot more to come. I'm really excited. So Carter says, the heart rooted in the greenness of the sun's energy. Gorgeous reading and singing. You're very, very welcome, Carter. I think there's a lot to be harvested in these inspired ways in which Hildegard relays her own vision that we are now experiencing in new levels and ways. Yeah. I'm very, very excited to talk about that. So, all of that said, I want to thank you. Thank you, Erica. Oh, I'm so glad it's connecting for you. Thank you, Hannah. Altissimo, the Most High. Yes, yes, yes. So, my friends, have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for joining me here. And I hope to see you in the group and beyond. And of course, reach out if you have any questions or want to invite any further conversation. Maria says, the relatively simple melody equals Mary's humility. Beautiful. Indeed. That essence of humility does sort of pervade this song too, doesn't it? I hadn't considered that before. I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you all for joining me, for your beautiful spirits. And I will see you in the group and beyond. Thank you. So many blessings to you, my friends. Take care. Bye.